Hey there folks, and it's Brian with Foxfire Armor again, and today we got a bunch of stuff to go over, and the first thing we're going to talk about is what just happened again in Kansas of all places, and I'm not sure why it seems to be happening in Kansas so frequently, but we had another train derailment, and this time the train happened to be carrying about 20 cargo containers or cargo trains of coal, and that spilled all over. And basically what the local authorities are saying is it's essentially a total loss. The cleanup effort was basically sweeping it all into the dirt and stuff. So 20 freight cars full of coal have basically been wiped off the map. Now, for those of you who don't understand what the whole issue with the coal derailment is, majority of the states in the United States still use coal power plants. Now, that is pretty standard around the world also. And 20, while not the biggest amount in the world, that is definitely going to affect energy costs, right? Mainly, primarily your electric. And we're already seeing it in California where they're telling people, hey, during peak hours, do not charge your electric vehicles. Hey, but also telling you, go buy that $50,000 electric car, right? It's all just kind of a joke at this point. So to go along with that, Russia is continuing to shut off natural gas resources to places like France and Germany and other places in the EU. I believe Poland got completely shut off. And with that, what we're seeing is places like Germany are now restarting their coal plants to bring electricity to their citizens, since they had shifted over to primarily natural gas. And the largest supplier of natural gas over there, you guessed it, Russia. So to play in with the energy costs, there is the diesel shortage and the DEF shortage. Now, for those of you who don't know what DEF is diesel emission fluid. And it's something that a lot of the newer trucks have, and it's essentially urea, which is P. And most of the urea that is used for the DEF fluid actually comes from our processing plants. It's going to be places like your beef farms, your pig farms, because they use the animal urine to produce the urea. Now, that wouldn't be the biggest issue in the world, having a DEF shortage, because there are older trucks and you can EGR delete your truck so that you don't have to use the DEF fluid. But that comes at a cost. And it also comes at the fact that they've been trying to get people to upgrade their trucks, and they've been upgrading their trucks, a lot of these owner-operators and trucking companies, to newer trucks that they can get into ports like LA, who have basically outlawed trucks prior to 2011. So most of these trucks are now running DEF systems, and there's also massive diesel shortages. I was just watching a video of a trucker who had posted on Twitter, and basically the two truck stops, gas station truck stops that were there were both 100% out of diesel and DEF. And there were about 40 trucks at either location just sitting there parked, waiting for fuel to arrive so that they can get their trucks out of there. Now, depending on what is actually on those trucks, may not be a big issue. You know, delivery dates are going to be delayed. Yeah, that's a big thing. But if you have refrigerated trucks that carry, say, groceries, that's a huge deal, because the longer that those groceries are on those trucks, and if those trucks can't run and keep the refrigeration going, you know, at that point you're losing product because it's sitting there due to these diesel and DEF shortages. So look for that. And when you're at the grocery store, you're probably going to start seeing prices go up yet again. Which that leads me into the 10,000 cattle dead due to heat stroke. Now, I'm not a cattle farmer, and I don't know too many people who work in the farming industry. I know enough, know quite a few in the area. I can't say I've ever heard of specifically steers or heifers, so cow, just collapsing dead due to heat. And on top of that, 10,000, an entire herd of cattle just dropping dead. To me, that seems kind of fishy. I think there's more to that story. I can't find anything. Obviously, there's a lot of conspiracy stuff, but just so you guys are aware, obviously that's going to affect meat prices more than likely. So if you can, make sure you're shopping local. If you can find people to team up with, buy half a cow, buy a whole cow, buy a quarter of a cow. You're going to help out your local farmers, and you're also going to save a ton of money. Now, you're going to need to be able to preserve that, whether that's a freezer or canning that meat. You need to do something, and helping out local farmers is really the way to go instead of, profiteering large companies who really just don't care, and they could be killing off these cattle just because, hey, it's good for profit margins, right? Now, the next thing I'm going to go into is something that I've kind of touched on a little bit, and, with all the talks of World War III and Russia and China and everything going on, one of the things that really isn't getting a lot of media time is places like Sri Lanka, which are basically the citizens are fighting back against the political class. And they're really actually fighting back, right? So they're throwing rocks at politicians. They are pushing their cars into the rivers. And they're really trying to take back their country, which is extremely admirable. Now, this goes back to what I was talking about previously when I talked about microcosms and basically small little pockets of things happening across the globe that could eventually lead to what I would consider to be the next World War III, right? I don't necessarily believe it's going to be a global conflict in the sense that we're going to be fighting Russia, China with nukes. I think more than likely we're going to see a bunch of kind of like pocketed, potentially like Civil War style conflicts that could escalate into a much bigger conflict. But I think at least in the near term, that is what we're going to see. And it's going to cause a lot of disruption, not only in the global economy, but the local economies for the United States, Canada, Europe, so places like the UK, France. And I really think that is what is ultimately needs to get quelled. Now, when I say quelled, I don't mean that the government comes in and, does bad things to those people, because obviously that's not what we're talking about. What we're hoping for when we say quelled is that the people can kind of come together and the politicians can realize that they're at fault and they can work towards a resolution and get things back on the right track. Now, here in the United States, that obviously seems basically impossible. I really am not going to hold my breath. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed and really hope that something can happen to kind of bring us out of where we're at. But unfortunately, right now it doesn't seem like that is a possibility. Which leads me into the next point, which is we are officially in the Great Reset. So for those of you who don't know what the Great Reset is, there's plenty of links out there. Feel free to Google. But basically, essentially, it is a worldwide reset, both economically and basically class system wise. It's a global reset is what it is. And that kind of goes along with actually something that we just heard from the Fed after they raised interest rates another 75 points or 0.75%, is that they are now in talks for creating a digital currency. Now, who would have said that's never going to happen, right? So the reality is, this is the whole point. The reason things like Bitcoin and stuff are crashing is primarily because you have no confidence in the US dollar. Bitcoin is still technically speculative. There haven't been enough adopters of it as far as payment systems are concerned. And the average user just doesn't know how or doesn't want to interact with Bitcoin. So what the Fed's thinking about doing and planning on doing is essentially creating a USD Bitcoin that the US dollar will no longer exist and there will be this digital currency, which I don't know if I'm going to have to tell many of you, but for some of you out there, that is a terrible, terrible thing for anyone who just wants to be left alone to live their life. It's going to lead to things like social credit scores and tracking spending, because they'll be able to track every single dollar in and out wherever you're spending it. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible idea, and I hope we never see it come to fruition. And the last thing that we're going to touch base on today is the continued calls for rolling blackouts this summer. Now, I've talked to a few people who've actually already seen some of these rolling blackouts, and luckily for them, they have lasted no more than like an hour to 2 hours. But there have been a few extended cases where they've been out for about 8 to 12 hours. So keep that in mind as you guys are getting your preps ready. Make sure you have enough fuel for your generators. If you don't have a generator, make sure you get a generator. And really just start making sure you guys are ready for whatever may or may not come, right? That's kind of the point, right? Better to need and not, or to have and not need, than to need and not have. That's really philosophy of life, and everyone should be living by it. And, you know, these things wouldn't be such big issues like bank runs and grocery runs where people go and hoard and stockpile everything and then blow through it in a week instead of rationing it out. So, all right, well, I'm starting to ramble and go on a tangent, but that's all I got for you guys today. So without further ado, if you guys could like, share, subscribe, every little bit is greatly appreciated, and that thumbs up helps keep us pushed in the algorithm. So again, this is Brian with Foxfire Armory. Until next time.